Good evening, traders. We have our weekly view here, our weekly TPO, and then this is a daily chart with balance areas outlined in green. So we can see these are RTH sessions, each bar, and these profiles are one RTH session. And then it'll show the after hours from today, since we're actively in that. But we can see this was Monday's session here. We have this gap that we couldn't fill as we gapped down. And in today's session, we had good range down, and we took out the previous weekly low, again, based on the RTH session. So I don't think it took out Globex. It did not yet, but it did take out the RTH. So we can see just looking at this chart, if we look at the daily bars, which this will include ETH session in these, but this is not the first, move up and then giant bar that takes out a weekly low. And probably half the time on these, the next day we started moving right back up. Here's one, here's another big bar down. It was very similar. And then we took it all back the next day. Big bar down, took it back in 2 days. So there's no telling what's going to happen here. We look at the, again, this is a weekly chart, and we have the monthly chart here. So we're still trend up on the monthly. We are in balance now on the weekly and on the daily time frame. So now if we look here, this was Monday's session. This was the overnight last night. This is today's session. So the overnight last night opened up and it started moving lower after we had a pretty weak close on Monday's session. We made new all-time highs, and we came back and closed down near the lows. So on the overnight session, pretty much moved down all night. And as we opened up, we tried to move higher in A, and then B period, we took the high of A, but couldn't really fill the gap. Close this back up so we can see. So B period came up and couldn't really fill this gap here. And then we started extending down. Had really good range on B, which set a pretty wide IB. And then we balanced out for a while. And I believe this was around the zero GEX level. We held this 5090 area that I was talking about earlier. I don't remember if I mentioned in the video or not, but it's one of the areas I was watching. And put in a lot of volume here in this area. And then we kept moving south until we got to this, where we had all these levels piled up from our weekly balance. We can see them all right here. This is a balance area I have stacked right on top of this other balance area. So we came back down, retraced this whole balance, and basically found support at our previous balance area ahead of our gap that's right here. So I can drop this on the chart so it's a little easier to see. That's roughly our gap area. Very hard to see there. All right, that's not the color I use, but you get the point there. So we did put in 2 sets of singles today. And then you can see as we got down to the lows, we had a poor low. And, because of the nuances of ES, we look at these different ways. But I was saying this about 212, that I thought this poor low was probably because the market was too short. And I was expecting it was more likely, I think we had a higher probability of moving back up to the close as opposed to actually extending lower. So we did get a nice move up here, put in a lot of volume at the close. So I think we got too short, and I think this was just short covering into the close. A lot of people took those positions off, don't want to hold them overnight. Maybe we'll see those come back in tomorrow. We don't know. So trend day down, we moved value lower. And like I said, we broke the previous low. So the things that we couldn't accomplish is we couldn't fill the gap, and we couldn't fill the top set of singles here, even though we did fill this lower one. So when we look at, we move lower, how good of a job did we do? We had really good volume. We had 1.5 million, good relative to what we've seen. We had negative delta of 20K. We did get too short, so we didn't end up with a extreme day down where we closed near the lows, and we couldn't move POC lower. If we look So if we look at this chart here, this is our TPOC, which we're 8 wide, I think. Yeah, we got 8 wide up here, but then our volume POC is right here where this orange line is too. And this, so I actually have this split out here. Let me reset those so we can see. So we put in a lot of volume up here, and we moved our volume POC down here. But if I split out M, if I split up that short covering and where we see the all the volume at the close, then this profile has a little bit of a different look. So we had some areas where it looks like we had some stop runs, and we just have, these are all 4 digits going all the way down, and then we can see our poor low right here. So there's a very good possibility that this gets cleaned up tomorrow. And what I'm going to be watching for is progress here in this area for a short, and see if we can clean up this poor low and extend down to our gap area and maybe start filling this gap in. For the long side, I'm going to be watching this area here where we had some supply. We couldn't get back up and fill these singles any further. So that's pretty much it. That's what I'll be watching tomorrow. And then we'll look at the overnight, and we'll get a better idea how we're positioned overnight, how the inventory is positioned, what kind of potential range that we have, if, basically what the targets are going to be to the downside or to the upside, depending on where we'll likely open. Tomorrow we do have, so we have the ADP employment report. That's not as important as the NFP that comes out on Friday, but might get a little bit of reaction. Jolts is a big release, and then we have Powell speaking. And Powell is speaking ahead of a couple other speakers, but also Beige Book, which is the report that the FOMC looks at whenever it comes to deciding what they're going to do at their next meeting. And then Thursday, we have the jobless claims again. We have Powell. Also, something might be interesting is 10-year and 30-year bond announcement to see, what their mix is going to be, how much they're going to issue. And we have a balance sheet, which I think wouldn't expect many surprises there with Powell speaking twice, kind of front running that announcement. And then Friday, like I said, we have NFP, which is, generally pretty big release, but we do have a lot of stuff ahead of it. So that's what we're looking for going into tomorrow's session. And I don't think we really have many earnings to worry about tomorrow. Pretty much everything's gone now. So Campbell suit, that ought to be a nice one. All right, so that's it. We'll see you all in the morning.